The crystal chandeliers of the Manhattan Grand Gala reflected in Alara Vance's eyes, but she wasn't looking at the glitter. She was watching the room, a sea of familiar faces that still, after all these years, looked through her. This $2.4 billion partnership with Croft Enterprises was signed, but Alara knew that in this world, ink wasn't dry until the egos were satisfied. The setting was, as always, impeccable. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, bathed in the soft glow of early December. Outside, a gentle snow flurried against the tall windows, a silent movie playing behind the thick velvet curtains. Inside, the air was warm, smelling of expensive perfume and the faint, oaky aroma of aged scotch. A live jazz quartet played classics. Fly Me to the Moon was the current tune, a sophisticated, nostalgic hum that the older guests, the ones with the real power, visibly appreciated. Alara Vance, in her mid-40s, moved through the crowd with a practiced stillness. Her custom-made dark blue gown was elegant, designed for respect, not attention. She was, as she often was, one of the only black faces in the room not holding a serving tray. As she accepted a glass of seltzer water from a passing waiter, she instinctively recalled her father's words. He'd been a mechanic, a man whose hands were perpetually stained with grease, but whose mind was sharp. "Dignity is the one thing they can't take, Alara," he told her, wiping his hands on a rag. "Don't ever give it away." She navigated the entrance smoothly, her name checked off a very exclusive list. The whispers began almost immediately, muffled by the clinking of champagne flutes. Vance Innovations came out of nowhere. "Heard she's self-made. Julian is taking a risk." Alara ignored them. She was here to solidify her company's future, not to make friends. Julian Croft found her near the main stage. In his early 50s, the CEO of Croft Enterprises looked every bit the part of old money, but tonight, his warm greeting was stiff, his eyes darting nervously around the room. "Alara, wonderful to see you," he said, shaking her hand a little too firmly. "The announcement is set for 9 p.m., right after the main donation." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "Everything is good. Just a formality." Alara simply nodded, her calmness a stark contrast to his agitation. As Julian spoke, her gaze drifted past his shoulder. Across the room, near the bar, a younger woman in a flashy sequin dress was watching her. It wasn't a curious glance, it was a stare of undisguised contempt. Alara registered the look, catalogued it, and turned her full attention back to Julian, not giving the woman the satisfaction of a reaction. Julian, however, noticed his sister's stare. His smile faltered, becoming forced. "If you'll excuse me," he said, abruptly cutting off his own sentence. I see someone I must greet." He gestured vaguely and then hurried away, leaving Alara alone just as Serafina Croft began to walk slowly, deliberately, across the room toward her. The tension in that ballroom is high, and you can feel what's coming. If you are still watching this video and feeling the power in this story, please comment with the number 8 below, just to let me know you're here. We are Black King, and if you haven't subscribed yet, I strongly encourage you to subscribe and turn on that notification bell. Your support helps us continue to create powerful content that informs and inspires. Now, let's see exactly what happens when Serafina arrives. Serafina Croft stopped a foot away from Alara, the crimson wine in her glass swirling like her visible envy. Alara held her ground, her mind briefly recalling Julian's obvious nervousness just moments before. The jazz quartet was on a break, and the resulting quiet meant the ambient sound was now the clinking of silverware on small plates as guests picked at shrimp cocktails and various hors d'oeuvres. The lowered volume made Serafina's approaching voice carry. "You must be Ms. Vance," Serafina said, her voice dripping with a sarcasm that was anything but subtle. "My brother has such bold taste in partners." Alara met her gaze, refusing to be intimidated. She thought again of her father's words on dignity, using them as an internal shield. "I have bold standards," Alara replied, her voice calm and even. A smirk played on Serafina's lips. She looked Alara up and down, a blatant dismissal. "You know, some of us are born into this world," she said, gesturing vaguely at the opulent room. "Others just try to buy a seat at the table." The onlookers who had been pretending not to watch were now openly staring, forming a subtle half-circle. Alara's eyes remained level. And some of us, Alara said, her voice dangerously quiet, filled the table. The comeback, sharp and immediate, visibly infuriated Serafina. Her smile vanished. The mask of civility dropped. "Oh dear," she announced loudly, feigning a clumsy misstep. "I am so clumsy." She lunged forward slightly, tripping with practiced ease, and deliberately appended her glass. The dark red wine splashed down the front of Alara's dark blue gown. Gasps rippled through the nearby crowd. The wine dripped onto the polished floor. Serafina leaned in, ostensibly to apologize. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, loud enough only for Alara and those closest to hear, but laced with venom. "My apologies." Her eyes glittered. "You just blend into the shadows so easily. I barely saw you standing there." The room was dead silent. Cameras flashed, the clicks echoing in the heavy air, capturing Alara's stained dress and Serafina's triumphant smirk. Serafina stepped back, awaiting the tears, the yelling, the very public meltdown she had engineered. Instead, Alara Vance slowly, methodically, reached into her evening bag and pulled out her smartphone. As Serafina waited for the meltdown, Alara Vance unlocked her phone, her expression as calm as if she were checking the weather. The flash photography continued, relentlessly documenting the stain, the calm face, the smirking bully. Serafina's smirk began to falter, replaced by a flicker of confusion. This was not the reaction she had planned for. Alara's fingers moved with precision across the screen. She navigated to her contacts, ignoring the frantic rushing sound of Julian Croft pushing his way back through the crowd. She selected a single contact from her favorites list, a name designated only by a single initial. This was the one-word phone call promised in her own company's emergency protocols. She thought briefly, not of the humiliation nor the expensive dress, but of her thousands of employees, many of whom were people of color, women, and immigrants, who faced quieter, boardroom versions of this very insult every single day. They didn't have this platform. She did. She tapped the screen once. It was a direct line secured, no ringing. She lifted the phone to her ear as Julian skidded to a stop beside her, his face pale with panic. "Serafina, what did you do?" he hissed. The crowd watched. Alara ignored Julian. A voice was on the other end. Alara spoke one single clear word into the receiver. "Execute." She hung up. "A misunderstanding, Alara, I'm sure." Julian began, his hands flapping uselessly, desperately trying to de-escalate, to apologize for his sister. "She's young, she didn't mean." He was cut off by a sound. A loud, electronic ping. A priority news alert. It echoed from a phone on a nearby table. Then another and another, like a digital virus, as the phones of every executive, every journalist, every banker in the ballroom lit up simultaneously. The heavy, expectant silence of the room was shattered. Julian, mid-sentence, pulled out his own phone. His face, already pale, drained of all remaining color. He stared at the screen, his mouth open, as he read the alert aloud, his voice barely a whisper. E-Flash, Vance Innovations has terminated its $2.4 billion partnership with Croft Enterprises, effective immediately, citing violations of the Ethics and Integrity Clause. Serafina stared, finally uncomprehending. "What? You can't do that." Alara finally looked directly at Serafina, her voice cold, clear, and final. "I already did. The $2.4 billion bomb has just been dropped." If you are still watching this video and you are feeling the absolute power of that moment, please let me know you've made it this far by commenting with the number 8 below. We are Black King, and this is the content we love to bring you. If you haven't subscribed yet, I strongly encourage you to subscribe and turn on that notification bell, because you do not want to miss what happens next. Your support helps us continue to create amazing content to inform and inspire you. Now let's watch the fallout. The silence that followed Alara's two-word confirmation, "I already did," was heavier and more expensive than the diamonds in the room. Julian Croft looked back and forth between his sister's stunned, pale face and the E-Flash, the $2.4 billion death sentence, glowing on his phone. The crowd, no longer mocking or whispering, had their phones out, but they weren't taking pictures of Alara's stained dress anymore. They were filming the public, real-time implosion of the Croft family. The atmosphere wasn't celebratory. It was a corporate crisis unfolding live. The jazz quartet remained silent, their instruments forgotten. "Alara, please," Julian barked, his desperation finally breaking through his polished veneer. He grabbed her arm, his grip tight. "This is insane. You can't destroy decades of work over a spilled drink." Alara pulled her arm away, not aggressively, but with a gentle, firm finality that brooked no argument. "It wasn't the wine, Julian. It was the principle." Her voice was quiet, yet it carried across the hushed ballroom. She gestured toward the ethics and integrity clause mentioned on the news alerts lighting up the room. "My company does not partner with those who publicly violate that clause." "Your sister," she said, looking briefly at the frozen Serafina, "was your representative here tonight?" "The violation is clear, and the consequences are contractual." Serafina just stared, her arrogance shattered, replaced by a childlike confusion. She didn't grasp the scale of what she had done. Alara turned, not to the exit, but to the small, empty stage nearby where the orchestra's microphone still stood. She picked it up. A soft thump echoed as it turned on. The room froze. "When I walked in here tonight," she said, her voice resonating calmly without anger, "I was reminded how easily power mistakes itself for class." She scanned the crowd, her gaze meeting the eyes of billionaires, investors, and rivals. "But class isn't what you own," Alara continued, her voice steady. "It's how you treat people when you believe they can't punish you for it. Tonight wasn't my embarrassment." She paused, letting the words settle. "It was this room's mirror. I hope you like what you see." Alara placed the microphone down gently, nodded once to the stunned crowd, and walked toward the main exit, her back straight, leaving the wine-stained dress as a final, silent testament. The heavy oak doors of the ballroom closed behind Alara Vance, shutting out the chaos she had unleashed. The sound of Julian Croft's frantic, raised voice, "Get our lawyers on the phone now," was cut off by the thick wood. Inside, Serafina was finally crying, the reality of the cost crashing down on her. But outside, in the quiet, marble-floored lobby of the plaza, the only sound was the distant clinking of ice from the bar. Alara walked calmly, her head held high. The hotel staff, the bellhops, the concierge, they had all seen her enter hours before, just another wealthy guest. Now, they watched her leave, their expressions a mixture of awe and respect. The wordless news had traveled faster than the e-flash. A doorman, holding his cap, rushed to hold the main door open for her. "Have a good evening, Miss Vance," he said, his tone respectful. "You as well, Thomas," Alara replied, her voice warm, acknowledging him by his name tag. She stepped out into the cold December air. The snow was falling a little heavier now. Her car, a classic American-made Lincoln Town car, was already waiting at the curb. It was not flashy, but solid, reliable, and comfortable, a subtle choice that resonated with her character. Her assistant, Marcus, stepped out and opened the rear door. He was all business. "Ma'am," he said, as she settled into the leather seat. He handed her a tablet, already glowing with data. "It's done. The wire services picked it up 90 seconds ago. Croft Enterprises pre-market futures just dropped 18%. Alara nodded, her eyes on the tablet. "Do you want to prepare a public statement for the morning shows?" Marcus asked, his voice even. Alara looked out the window at the falling snow, watching the city lights blur. "I already gave one." Marcus looked confused for a second. "Ma'am." "The integrity clause," Alara said, turning back to him. "It speaks for itself. We will make no further comment tonight. Let the contract do the talking." As if on cue, Marcus's own phone buzzed with a high-priority alert. He glanced at it, his eyes widening slightly. "Ms. Vance, Forbes is reporting. They're estimating the immediate loss in Croft market value is already at $480 million. In the first 15 minutes, the $2.4 billion partnership loss is just the start." Alara nodded slowly, the weight of the decision settling, but not the rightness of it. Integrity always costs more than people expect. Her own phone, which had been silent, began to ring. The caller ID was simple: Chairman. It was the chairman of her own board. By sunrise, The clip of Serafina spilling the wine, followed immediately by the wave of breaking news alerts on guests' phones, was the #1 trending video on the planet. News anchors on Bloomberg and CNBC replayed the one-word phone call, execute, with a mix of awe and analysis. They contrasted the viral image of Alara's stained dress with the diving red arrow of the Croft Enterprises stock ticker. The fallout was immediate and brutal. News analysts praised Alara's move. Vance Innovations didn't just exit a contract. One analyst on CNBC said they made a multi-billion-dollar statement about corporate ethics in real time. The $2.4 billion deal loss was confirmed. Analysts predicted Croft Enterprises, now facing intense scrutiny over its internal culture, might not survive the catastrophic damage to its reputation. Julian Croft was seen, harassed by reporters, outside his shuttered Manhattan office, refusing to comment. Serafina Croft had vanished from the public eye, her social media accounts deleted. Meanwhile, Alara Vance was at her own company's serene corporate headquarters, calmly leading her morning team meeting as usual. Vance Innovations released one and only one official statement: respect is not negotiable. The post went viral. Alara's company's own valuation, bolstered by the investor confidence in her decisive and principled leadership, began to soar. Weeks later, Alara was interviewed at a global leadership summit. The room was packed. The journalist, respectful, finally asked the question on everyone's mind. The media called it the quietest corporate execution in history. How did it feel, he asked, to humiliate them so completely? Alara smiled faintly, a knowing, gentle smile. I didn't humiliate anyone, she corrected him. I just reminded them of the hierarchy they forgot. The journalist leaned forward, intrigued. Which hierarchy? Alara looked directly at the camera, her voice carrying the same calm, unshakable strength she'd shown in the ballroom. The one where decency ranks above dollars. The quote became legendary. Boardrooms printed it. Universities studied it. The Croft family faded into obscurity, their once great empire a cautionary tale of arrogance. Alara Vance, having proven her point, continued to build her table, setting new standards for the world. In a world that often measures worth in dollars, Alara Vance's story reminds us of a higher currency: dignity. True class is not about the label on a dress, but the character of the person wearing it. Like a quiet truth spoken in a loud room, her actions proved that when we stand by our principles, we build something far more valuable than any empire. Because in the end, decency is the only asset that never loses its value.